Hi, it's Dave, and I'm going to be going over the Schachner. I don't know how to say it. Sarah Schachner tune from the Anthem album, as requested by Sean. Now, there's one main theme at the beginning, which is really interesting to look at because it kind of sets the tone for the whole of the rest of it. But then there's a kind of variation that goes on afterwards, which is kind of interesting as well. I have got this up here, but I don't think I'm going to play it because when I've done that, even if the videos are private, they still block it when they pick up the music. So there's a theme at the beginning, which is based around the chords that the whole track is based on, which is in B minor, and it uses what I call the James Bond progression because it's not what the James Bond theme originally was, but what it's evolved into in the more modern era, which is the moving up. Originally, the James Bond theme just went. But the more modern versions, I think the David Arnold ones, I think the first David Arnold one, it did it where it goes. And so it goes from the B minor to the G major to the E major. And it's still got the sort of swaggery James Bond feel, but it's got a moodier, perhaps more serious feel to it. Whereas the original one was the kind of big band feel. It was kind of swaggery and jazzy. And these chords give it a more, it's closer kind of to like the Avengers kind of theme now. It's kind of a fanfare-like thing. So in this track, what she does is has this theme which starts on the G, which is interesting and unusual. And it goes. So we've got the B minor, but the actual melody starts on the G, which kind of creates this tense feeling because there's an F sharp in there. Going down to the G, the tune plays this F sharp in this one, so it becomes a G major seventh, which is for trailer music or this style of music, I would say, is a little bit unusual. But the end result is you get this kind of discordant feeling, then something more resolved, softer feeling, and then with the melody it goes down. Going down to that G sharp, it really highlights the E major. But it does that kind of triumphant twist from the G to the E major. So we get the. So the melody's doing quite a lot there. It's highlighting the chords, it's creating a tension and then a release and then a kind of triumphant uplift at the end. It's a sort of multi-purpose theme, really. It's reinforcing the chords, but it's also adding to the chords. It's doing more than just the chords would do on their own, especially this starting on the G, which isn't in the chord. So, and it's a semitone above one of the notes that's in the chord, so there's a clash there. And that's quite a sort of pop song type feeling. But because it's played sort of in brass and strings, it has more of that Avengers fanfare type feel. It feels kind of majestic. Now, later on in the track, there's a lot of sort of melodic ideas that are moving around the B minor chord, that the B will be sitting there. And it's doing these semitones again, which give it this tense, dissonant feel again, which increases the tension. And it goes up to the minor third, but it also goes to the F, which has a Middle Eastern kind of flavor to it. It's certainly an unusual kind of scale. But in this case, it doesn't really sound Middle Eastern. It's kind of works like a metaphor, I suppose, almost, because you've got this kind of strong B feeling going on here. It's strength, but then what's going on above it? The metaphor is almost like you've got this strength, but then you've got something that is pushing against it and fighting against it. And there's like a sort of battle going on in the music, which I think is really interesting. And it does start to change through those original chords again. Although when it goes to the G, it uses the F sharp again. It doesn't use the F natural, which it does over the B. When it goes down to the G, it still uses the A sharp and the C sharp, but it uses the F sharp again. So you've still got the G major 7th there, and then the E major still uses the A sharp in it and the C sharp. I don't think it uses the F natural over that. So that's only over the B where it has the most tension. But once it starts to move to the other chords, it stays slightly more within the chord notes. So you get this sound quite a lot throughout it. The interesting thing as well with this sort of little melodic fragment that's going on is when it goes to the E major, it uses the C sharp and the D and the F sharp, which is kind of what is that? That's a 9th chord, but it's kind of an 11th, no, not an 11th chord, 13th. Doesn't have the A in there, but it's very jazzy, very unusual for this type of music. But those extensions, the C sharp, the A sharp, and the F sharp over that E major chord, they don't get played like a chord. They get played as little notes moving in between and causing tension and coming out of that tension by going back to the chord tones. So it's an interesting track in that a lot of the work in creating tension and creating that feeling of a fight going on is actually done in the harmony, which is a little bit unusual, I think. It's quite common in trailer music to have that major 7th to create that kind of thing, but to have the 7th, 9th is a little bit unusual. In terms of melody, looking at it from the master melody faster kind of point of view, it's these semitones that are the identity chunks. So at the start you have that's definitely one, going down to the G, repeating that, and it's the semitone again. So there's a lot of semitone movements that are either going to something dissonant or they're resolving the dissonance. They do both. So all in all, it's an interesting track. I hope that has given you something to think about in terms of what the music's doing. It's really unusual, so thanks for pointing that out to me. And it's very strong as well. And the tricky thing with using that kind of harmony in this type of music is not making it sound jazzy, not making it sound complex, keeping it a very direct expression, even with the more complex harmony. And I would say, from my point of view, the way that is done is through the complex notes being flavoring on top. So you'll have that B sitting there, and it will be little short notes that are darting around between the dissonant notes. But the actual chord and the tonality, I suppose you'd call it, that the track is in, is still very strong. It's the little details over the top that are fluttering around between these more discordant notes. And there are these repeating elements, especially the semitone going down. So if anything, the identity chunk in this track would probably be a semitone going down, and it's used starting on a discordant note and resolving, but it's also used, actually, no, both times it's predominantly used starting on a discordant note and going to one that's more consonant sounding. So yeah, I would say part of the identity chunk is starting on a dissonant note and resolving to one that's within the chord. It does that almost all the time, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. That is certainly something that you can take and use in other things. If you've got like a C major chord, you could have it going up instead. So from like an F sharp to a G, then maybe A minor, E minor. That's something that you can certainly use to create an identity chunk, a sort of memorable little idea that gets repeated in different contexts. You could have it with the major seventh as well. It would do a similar thing there, where it's starting on a discordant note, so you get that clash that then resolves, and it kind of creates that triumphant feeling. In fact, actually, that's C, A minor. I was doing E minor, but what if I could maybe do... that would be too normal, so it'd be a C minor. It maybe be to like the F sharp major or something to create that same or similar type of uplift feeling. So you could have like, oh, sorry. That's not quite it, is it? Maybe that. Need a bit of work, but I think there's a possible there. I hope that's been useful to you, and let me know if there's any other tracks that you'd like me to take a look at. Cheers, bye-bye.